This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right. With that, I will open this meeting of the Easthampton Planning Board for Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. We are all in person except for Harry Schumann, who is appearing remotely on Google Meets, and the meeting is being recorded. The first item on the agenda we have is public speak. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to something that is not on the agenda? We'll go through agenda items, but if there's anyone here to speak to something not on the agenda. I see nothing. Eli, anything on the internet there?
Nope.
All right, so with that, we'll move to quick approval of our planning board minutes from November 15th, 2022.
I motion to approve the minutes from November 15th, 2022.
I will second that.
All right, voting in favor to approve the November 15th minutes. Aye.
Aye.
Harry, you got to unmute so I can hear you vote. Or someone has to unmute you. Aye. All right.
Excellent.
Moving right along, we have one more quick item before we get to the main show. An A&R for 12 Industrial Parkway and 10 Industrial Parkway. Is there someone here to speak to that? Ooh. Yes?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
We can't hear you back here.
You can't hear me. All right. First, is this amplified or is this just recording?
It's just for the recording.
All right, so I will just speak louder.
These are on. What? These are on.
Are they amplifying though, or are they just record?
Try.
Hello? I think it's just recording. Is that louder? All right. Is there anyone here for the A&R for 12 and 10 Industrial Parkway? All right.
Were you expecting someone? Yeah, they said they were coming. Okay.
All right, well, let's set this aside and they can either deal with it at the end or we'll put it on the next meeting.
All right. Sounds good to me.
All right. Then the next item is Tasty Top Development LLC seeking a plan approval under section 7.4 for 2 commercial pad sites, 2 mixed-use buildings containing first floor commercial and 14 residential units each, the daycare and gymnastics facility, contractor storage building, 1 retail commercial building, and 1 building with 18 residential units with at least 25% of units affordable, and a plan approval under section 8.3 for 9 buildings each with 18 residential units with at least 15% affordable, and a special permit under section 8.32B for multiple buildings. Someone here to present on that? All right, step right up, please. And just so you know, obviously, we have all had the plans and the application package. It's been online and available, but if you can assume that you're presenting to people who have never looked at anything, that way members of the public who haven't or people watching remotely, that'll be really helpful.
Very good.
Good evening. My name is Don Abel. I'm an attorney in the city. My office is located on Northampton Street. I am here tonight with Frank DeMarinis, who's the manager of Tasty Top Development, Brian Balicki and Luke Showalter, who are engineers for the project from Furrow Engineering, Peter Graham, the Valley Housing Consultants, and we're joined remotely by Carrie Pike of Howard Stein Hudson, the traffic consultant. As noted, we are here to present applications for site plan approval and a special permit for the parcel commonly referred to as the Tasty Top parcel, located at 93 through 97 Northampton Street. As a longtime area resident, we know this is an iconic property in Easthampton. Generations of residents having shared experiences and memories from visiting or working there. However, time passes, growth and change occur, and particularly as we're seeing it now in Easthampton. The previous owners of the property had attempted to sell this property for the last 20 years. Recognizing that there was a need for them to move on, as well as put the property to another use besides that iconic ice cream stand. There were 2 prior relevant attempts at development. Neither of them panned out, and in each instance, they were national corporate interests whose sole interest was to locate a piece of land to be developed with their specific commercial properties in mind, and not really an intent to work with the community in any real fashion. We're now have a situation where we've got a successful local developer who's got a very real interest in developing in a the property in a manner that's going to positively impact the community. You may be familiar with some of his other work with the Roots Athletic and Learning Center facilities in Westfield. I don't know if you've had the opportunity. These facilities have had a very positive impact on Westfield and the surrounding communities, providing access to sports, recreational, social, and educational activities. Roots Gymnastics is one of the facilities there, and a version of that, or an outreach of that, will be incorporated into this project. And it's developed several Division I gymnasts, college gymnasts in its tenure. And the soccer complex that has been built there has been fantastic, hosting a number of community soccer leagues and now being used by many of the high schools to play soccer, so both indoors and out. There's also a Roots Learning Center located there, which is a care center for children. That will also be incorporated into this project and has been recognized by local schools in its positive impact on student learning. Mr. Demarinis has also developed significant healthcare, commercial, and educational facilities in other parts of the Northeast, and has done very well, and in each instance has always made it a point to develop properties in conjunction with the community in which he's located. And most importantly, he's a local presence, lives locally. He's hands-on with his projects, and he's been working very closely with city officials in developing these plans. He's going to continue to be actively involved with the management of the project, and will continue to care about how this project impacts the Easthampton community, and he's not just a distant corporate entity as we've encountered in the prior attempts. One thing that's positive with respect to the growth and change that Easthampton is seeing is that the planning community in town has been very proactive in preparing for the growth and change that is always coming. There's a master plan that's been in place in the city since 2008, which addresses issues of housing, land use, and economic development. There's also the Highway Business District Review Committee, in which this parcel is located in the Highway Business District, has prepared recommendations for development, which was issued in 2013. And most recently, the city completed its housing production plan in 2021, which runs effective through, I believe, 25 or 2026. When the applicant first reviewed this parcel for potential acquisition, among the first things he did was to reach out and communicate with city planning officials in order to understand what the city's goals and priorities were with respect to the future use of this property. The issues of affordable housing and mixed-use development were the two of the top priorities that were identified and encouraged for developing this project. The planning documents that I just referenced were reviewed, and particularly the housing production plan, in terms of adapting its guidelines in developing this project. One thing, the housing production plan, or the HPP, it encourages the creation of more affordable housing in the city to meet the market needs of the community and provide more affordable housing, as well as the other benefit is if the city is able to reach the 10% threshold, meaning that if 10% of the city housing units are deed restricted affordable housing, they will count to that 10% goal. And in that manner, the city avoids the potential of having comprehensive permits issued under Mass General Law, Chapter 40B, which allows permits to be issued, provides for permits to be issued, and potentially waiving the local zoning requirements and being compelled to adopt because we don't have that threshold. So it's been identified by city officials as an important goal. The HPP has also recognized one of the goals would be to address some of the restricting zoning that had been in place for some time in the city, and there have been amendments to the city zoning ordinances since that time, they include more relaxed approval and zoning requirements for affordable multifamily housing, which this project addresses, and also the extension of the smart growth zoning district into this portion of the Highway Business District. And as I said, both of those ordinances are being utilized in the development of this project. To summarize, the HPP has identified that there Their goals are to create a wide variety of affordable and mixed-income housing options and to strive to achieve that Chapter B 10% threshold. And in meeting that, estimated they would be looking at annually producing at least 38 units on an annual basis. The specific site that we're looking at was a site in the city. I think it was one of 4 that was identified as an underutilized site that had potential development, and there was an illustrated build-out in that document, and it was identified to the applicant that here is a proposed development option, and it was one of the sources that was used in the development of this project. And if you look at it, it's very similar to what we've put in front of your board today. And trying to adopt and address the city planning goals as to how to meet the affordable housing objectives. We've also reviewed, the applicant also reviewed the master plan, the recommendations of the Highway Business District, and each of them has focused on the importance of creating more affordable housing units in the city and the use of mixed-use development in business districts, together with the recommendations for more relaxed zoning and approval requirements, which we have seen put in place. As to the specific project, do we put that up so people can see?
Do I have to share the screen?
Yeah, you're a co-host, so you should be able to share the screen.
With the overall plan done.
Yeah, give me the overall plan, and maybe be ready, we can throw it on the phasing if we want to.
And if anybody needs to move to see the screen, feel free to move your chairs or anything.
I really get it.
There's also a touch screen if that works better.
So if we look at this project, Northampton Street is located on the bottom of it, on the westerly side of the project. The access point is through there. The portion of the property that abuts Northampton Street is zoned highway business, and that extends 800 feet off the road. Past that to what you'd call the rear of the property is zoned residential suburban A, which is the R15 district. In addition, recently, within the last year or so, the smart growth zoning district, which is an overlay district, was added onto the portion of the property that's the highway business district. And that provides some planning options that are available that are conducive to the planning that we've identified by the boards. And so it's an overlay, and we've elected to use that overlay of the smart growth zoning district as the controlling district. The property to the rear then, past the 800 feet, is the R15 district, and we are presenting our application for site plan approval for that portion of the property under section 8.3, which provides for affordable housing, and the zoning requirements there are that at least 15% of the units available there are designated as affordable housing. As I mentioned, we have our affordable housing consultant here with us, and I'm going to let him go through that a little bit more. I do note in the smart growth zoning district that there, the chair read the description of the properties. There are, I don't have the ability to mark it on here. Am I going to be off record if I?
Yeah, if you could say to the microphone, it'd be
So
better.
we can look, but off the road are some commercial uses. There are 2 mixed-use buildings on the property.
Consider sending someone up from your team to be the hands while you're the voice.
A human pointer?
If you can just point it out. So the footprints just off the highway, Luke, are 2 commercial centers. The Roots facility is located there. The two parallel buildings up in the middle are the mixed use. So those are going to have, that's part of the mixed use classification that we use. So those are going to have commercial property, commercial uses on the bottom, non-designated, with residential units up above. Well, the two in the middle are the mixed use ones, and then the rear are the residential units that are being developed as part of the R15 district. The two small buildings off to the right are the contractor service facilities, where the storage facilities used by contractors, local contractors. Both of these, because of the zoning changes that have been made, are subject to a site plan approval process, which is not quite as onerous as a special permit. There is still remaining for the back piece where the residential units are all located, that requires a special permit so the use of the project is subject to site plan approval under 8.3. However, there's a remnant of the zoning remaining, and I think the planning board has considered this, but that it may or may not have been intended, but there's a special permit required for multiple buildings to be located on the property, and so it's site plan and special permit for the rear, special permit up front, site plan up front.
Real quick, could you show us that delineation between
The
the
zoning
residential and the overlay?
It's right, yeah, that's that line right there, yep.
I know where it is, but I
Yeah.
want everything.
Okay, yes, thank you. In addition, and I don't know, Brian, can we put the phasing map up there?
Man, this thing's slow.
Thank you. So what we've proposed, this is a relatively large project, and in order to make construction easier as well as the impact to the community, we're proposing to develop this project in phases. And so those portions of the property identified in yellow are what constitutes phase one of the project. And that's going to be limited to installing some of the infrastructure, including addressing some of the interior roadwork as you see, and a crossing over the part of the wetland there, so that we can have access to the back. But the only two buildings being built are the two buildings that are located behind current developed structures or developing structures, and those are the two Roots facilities, the Roots Gymnastics and the Roots Learning Center, both which have received a lot of support already from the community looking to participate here. And that would be the extent of phase one. The second phase is the units in the light blue. Those are 3 of the housing units, each of which contain 18 units of housing. The requirement is to be built there is that one of them is located in the one to the lower left of the 3 is located in that smart zoning district. The other 2 are located in the R15 district, and each have their minimum requirements for the number of units that are affordable. I think some of that, and I'll defer to Mr. Graham in terms of decision-making, but at the very least, the minimum requirements are there, and I think we're contemplating increasing the number of units. That project will probably not, we're probably looking at an occupancy date if things go as we hope, well, maybe not as we hope, but as we expect. We're probably looking at the beginning of 2026 before there's occupancy in those units.
The phase 2 unit?
In the phase 2. The next phase then is the green up top and the 2 commercial projects down below. That's a 2 commercial, commercial spaces that are, there's some sense of what would be developed there, but I don't think any, I think there's anticipated a some sort of a restaurant facility up front or commercial use in the back, and then 4 more of the 18-unit residential buildings. Again, each phase, the bylaw provides that if we're going to phase, not only does the project have to meet phasing requirements, but each phase has to satisfy phasing requirements. So again, I'll defer to Mr. Graham when he has a chance to address you, but certainly it's anticipated that the minimum's going to be met, obviously, and I think there's more. And then finally, phase 4 is the pink section, which includes 3 more of the residential buildings, the ones that are, far where that line was. And so those are the ones that are in the R15 district. And then some of the commercial uses are the ones up front, the 2 contractor service units and the 2 mixed-use properties that have housing components in each. And again, having to meet them in that zone, it's a 25% minimum affordable housing units. And then the final street front commercial property, I think designated as a restaurant. So each one could take, I'm not the contractor or the engineer. I'll defer to people that have better knowledge of that. But I'm told that phase 2, you're looking at occupancy around 2016, provided there's no bumps. You're looking at least another year and a half for the next phase. So it's going to be a little time before these things are fully implemented. And I think what's critical is that it gives us a chance to move slowly, so we can get a sense of what's going on. Also, there's a number of units. It's an extensive project, and it gives the city a chance to adapt to these changes. It's not being created all at once. It's going to be a reasonably slow process so that the community can absorb and we can all get a sense of how the project is moving along. I also just want to reinforce that the applicant has been very proactive in reaching out and working with the city. Initially, it was with planning officials, and now we've had conversations and meetings with a number of the city departments, including the fire department, police department, public works, just in a sense of making sure we're working together, giving them a heads up on what's coming, some of the details, giving them a chance to address some of their concerns or issues, and that has all appeared to be very positive to this point. But it's something that's been very important to us to make sure that we're doing this in conjunction with the city so that we're working it together. I do note it's been in the papers a little bit recently, but it's my understanding that the planned improvements to the city's water supply system, especially along Northampton Street, predates this application. I think some of the impetus for doing it was the fact that the city had adopted the smart growth zoning district, and it was in anticipation of that some of that was generated. But this project is not what's generating that update, at least from our conversations with the City Department of Public Works. And also just to again reinforce that one of the benefits of this phasing model is that it really mitigates a lot of the concerns about the impact to the city and the various departments and the city as a whole, so that we're not just dumping this on. I want to note that there are a number of concerns that people have raised with respect to the property. There's a number of concerns that are addressed in the criteria for the site plan approvals, but that a number of those are addressed by other entities or concerns. For instance, we have filed a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission and are working with them to address any issues that they have and to make sure we're in compliance. And that will in turn address a number of the issues that the Planning Board is concerned about. We have been coordinating with the Mass Department of Transportation regarding traffic in the area. We have our own traffic consultant, but we've been working with the DOT. They are the ones that control curb cut access, and so they're going to play a very important role. Again, there were projects in the chute for development of this area. I think looking ahead, I think some of the unfortunate occurrences we've had, occurrences may be too passive, but lost lives have occurred on that road, and that's gathered the attention of the DOT. So I think that they're looking to pick up the pace a little bit. There's no guarantees. We're just starting that process. Things move slowly, but the communication is there, and we're looking forward to working with them. And also another issue is that there are concerns that the planning board has with the adoption of the affordable housing, but much of that, while the smart growth zoning district sort of relieves some of the zoning pressure and approval pressure from this process making a site plan approval, we will still be under the standards of the Mass Department of Housing and Community Development, which are extremely rigid. Again, I'll defer to Mr. Graham on that, but we have other eyes looking on us besides the planning board's vote that's ahead of us. At this point, I think I'm going to let Mr. Showalter from Furrow Engineering give you perhaps a little more in-depth perspective on the design of the project. Thank you.
A question before you come off, just regarding the phased approach that you just detailed, and it just went off screen, but phase 1, you said infrastructure. Phase 2, there was a roadway coming in for some of the residential, and phase 3, the rest of the residential. That roadway, is that phase 1 apart for phase 2, or how are you breaking that?
So the conversations we've had is that we are...
Luke, answer that.
Okay, I'll defer to Luke then on that one.
You can explain to me.
Yeah. Very good. It's a good question.
Sorry, could you just repeat the question for me?
Yes. The roadway that leads into phase 2 and phase 3, when is its phase development? Will it be completed in phase 1 or built out in portions?
Yeah, so it'll be built out in 2 portions. Phase 1 will complete up until a little bit past the bridge crossing to there.
Yellow, right?
The yellow portion, yep. And then in phase 2, the paved section will be stopped at where the green starts in phase 3.
The blue. Yeah. The blue. So we are building that loop road.
The whole loop.
The whole loop on phase
Yep.
2.
Phase 2 then.
So the phase 2 will also include a gravel loop around for fire access.
And in phase 1, are you connecting to Colonial Avenue, it looks like, as well? Is that an access road?
So that will not be open to the public. It'll be a gated fire access. The fire department requested that.
For fire department access only?
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. We're going to do public questions a little bit later, okay? Thank you.
Just about the gravel road that you said for fire access? Can't do that.
2 different things. I think he was saying the gravel road is the first part of the loop up there, but I think the Colonial Ave access is part of the paved road.
I thought I heard him say fire access, gravel in the rear for fire access. That's correct.
You want to confirm that?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that has been, we've had multiple conversations with the fire department, and this is what we settled on for now. Obviously, the phase 2 road loop will be paved in phase 4 of the project.
Thank you.
You're saying we can't do gravel?
Not for fire access.
I lived in a condo complex, and I do live in a condo complex on 359 Main.
You can't run fire apparatus on a gravel road.
Oh, is that what you're saying?
Soft gravel.
Okay, all right.
The fire department's going to have to review and comment on this anyway, so we don't have to actually deal with that, but thank you.
Just not possible, extremely unsafe.
We'll make sure it gets covered.
Well, I'm just going to introduce myself again. My name's Luke Showalter. I'm an engineer with Furrow Engineering. So the subject lot is approximately 33 acres of partially developed land. An intermittent stream runs through the center of the property, dividing it into an eastern and western option.
Is his mic off? Somebody commented on the web that the mic was off.
Yeah, it looks like it's...
Planning board members, please speak up.
So this is our only microphone, so just I speak loudly.
Okay, this isn't helping me.
Yeah.
No, that's going to
I'll lean
recording.
into it then. So like I was saying, there's a stream that goes through the center of the property. It divides the property into eastern and western portions. The western portion, which has frontage along Northampton Street, was previously developed and included a driving range and an ice cream stand, as was mentioned before, and also a single-family home and a barn. The eastern portion has been used as an agricultural field. So just to give a brief history of the project to date, Shortly after the property was purchased, we had an initial meeting with the city department's heads to get as much input as we could. Since then, we've continued to meet with the city planner and other departments to develop the plans up to what you see today. The design of the development is, as Don Abel was mentioning, is consistent with one of the options that were presented for this lot in the city's housing production plan from 2021. GZA, Geoenvironmental, was hired in June of this year to identify and delineate all wetland resource areas on site. A notice of intent and stormwater permit application were filed in November. We had our first hearing before the Commission, Conservation Commission, on December 12th, which was continued to January 9th. We also received a determination from the Department of Fish and Wildlife that the development will not result in any impact to habitat for priority species. So the proposed project that the applicant is proposing is to redevelop the site into a mixed-use residential and commercial development. I'll just go off a list of what's going into there. A Roots Learning Daycare Facility, a Roots Gymnastics Center, 10 three-story apartment buildings totaling 176 apartment units, 2 restaurant pad sites along the Northampton Street, 2 mixed-use retail and office buildings with 26 apartment units above, 1 freestanding retail building, and 2 commercial storage buildings. The development will also include construction of an internal roadway system connecting the eastern and the western portions of the site with a bridge over the resource areas. The entire development will be serviced by municipal water and sewer. Water will connect into Northampton Street, and sewer will connect from a sewer interception line at the rear of the parcel. Each building will have appropriate parking in accordance with the use. And the stormwater management system includes several detention basins that are spaced throughout the site. And the system will meet all Mass DEP stormwater standards and is currently in the process of review by the Conservation Commission and the city engineer. So I'm going to hand it off to Carrie Pike, the traffic engineer, who I believe is joining us virtually.
Could you just unshare your screen? Thanks.
Do you want me to share my screen? Do you want to pull up my PowerPoint?
Carrie, could you try to share your screen? You should be able to.
Okay, let me see if it works. Are you seeing the study area?
Negative.
Nope.
Oh, hold on a minute. Doesn't look like it's working. It keeps. Let's see. Sorry, I don't use Google Meet that often, so see if I do this by a window, if that'll work better. Okay, did that work? You should be seeing the map of the study area.
Yes. Yep, you got it.
There we go.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Carrie Pike with Howard Stein Hudson. We're the traffic consultant for the project. And I'm just going to give you a very high-level overview of the traffic study that we submitted. So what you can see here on the screen is the site in orange. And then we studied the signal at West Street, obviously the project driveway when the project is in place, and then the signal at Florence and Highland to the north of the site. So here's the site plan, which you saw previously with the phasing on it. It seems like we've covered that, so I won't go over that again here, but it does play into one of the things we've been looking at is a signal for the driveway on Northampton Street, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So again, we have our different phases here in the different colors. One of the things that we do, we take traffic counts. So we took traffic counts at Highland and Florence. Those were actually taken in 2021. We also did the traffic study for the new Starbucks that's under construction. So those counts were from that study. And then we did new traffic counts here at West Street this year. And this shows you, when we look at the traffic from the site, we look at how it's going to travel to and from the site. And this information, the percentages that you see here, are based on actual journey to work data from the US Census. And so you can see we have 28% coming and going from West Street, 33% kind of from Town Center, 23% along Florence, and 16% continuing north on Route 10, Northampton Street. And then what we do is we look at how many trips, and it's based on, there's a very gigantic compendium of data that the Institute of Transportation Engineers has collected over many years, and they update these data frequently for all of these different kinds of land uses. And so for each of the different buildings that are proposed on the site, we look at how many trips, again, based on these data, will each of those generate. So you can see we have community center, that's representing the Roots Gymnastics Center. We have a daycare center. We have the multifamily housing. We have warehousing. We have shopping center, and then we have restaurant. And so when we look at all of those, and there's formulas for each of these different land uses based on the numbers that you see here, the smaller units, so like 208 units of housing total on the site. This is the whole site together, even though it's going to be phased. We look at basically the worst case of when the whole thing is built and in place. And then you can see here what we really are concerned with, and what we will do some more detailed analysis with, is the total in the morning rush hour and in the afternoon rush hour. So we have about 345 new trips in the morning and 415 in the evening. And so we take those, and using those percentages that I showed you previously, we distribute those along the roadways. And so this is the new trip. So you can see this is the site driveway here, kind of in the middle of the image. And so in the exiting trips in the morning, we have 107 coming out and turning left, 69 coming out and turning right, and then they go proceed through the two intersections on either side. And then similarly, you can see the entering vehicles as well, 103 turning right into the site from the south, 66 turning to the left and into the site from the north. And then similarly in the afternoon rush hour, you can see again the different numbers there, the trips that are exiting, the trips that are coming in. And so then what we do is we take those and we add them to the volumes that we collected, and we do what we call a capacity analysis, which basically looks at the two signalized intersections as well as the site driveway. And it gives a letter grade. It's a pretty complex, we now have, thankfully, when I started, we had to do this math by hand. Thankfully, we don't have to do that anymore. We have a computer program to do it for us. There's a lot of complex formula that are gone through. But what ends up happening is it gives basically a letter grade. And it's just like in school, where A is very good and F is not so good. So you can see here, and we look at three different conditions. We look at the existing condition. So that's today, how are these intersections operating? And again, we look in the morning and in the afternoon. We do this analysis, and you can see in the morning, the two signalized intersections up at Florence and Highland, we have a level of service C, so kind of middle of the road, right? And then at West Street, level of service B, so that's actually pretty good for a signal. A lot of times there's some inherent delay that happens just by the fact that you have a signal. Sometimes you have to sit there, even when it's the middle of the night and there's no cars coming on the side street or on the street that has the green light, right? So there's some inherent delay there that this measures. And then in the afternoon, we have level service D. And so then the next thing that we do is we look at a no-build condition. And the no-build condition is what would happen if the project isn't there, but there are still other things that are happening in your community, right? Like the Starbucks that's under construction, for example. We typically apply a background growth rate, which we did here, 1% per year for 7 years. We look at a 2029 condition. And again, that's presuming that everything is built by then. And so we add that background growth, which kind of accounts for things that are not explicitly accounted for. So that might be population changes, other developments that right now we don't know anything about them, but there might be other new things that are coming in that we can't specifically say, these trips get assigned here. So that background growth accounts for that. And so when we do the analysis again, you can see we get some changes in the AM. Things get a little bit worse, similarly in the PM. And then in the build condition, that's when we add the traffic volumes that we generated that I showed you on the previous diagrams. And so you can see here, we do have some changes, particularly at West Street, and we need to look more closely at that to see if those can be mitigated, perhaps with timing changes to help. And some of that is just the number of trips that we're adding on the side street on West Street, because I showed you that, I think it was 28% coming that way. So we'll be taking a look at that to see if we need to make some modifications to that signal to help fix this problem. And then we also look at the site driveway. You can see here, and obviously that doesn't exist today. There's no traffic going in and out. And then you can see that the left is a bit of a problem in the afternoon again, that even though it's unsignalized, and the program does kind of inherently not really take into account what I would call the Massachusetts driving factor, where maybe we're a little bit more aggressive than some other parts of the country, but that still is problematic. And so when we look at that, one of the things then we wanted to think about was, do we need a traffic signal at the site driveway on Northampton Street? And so to figure that out, there's a process called a signal warrant analysis. And you can see these 8 warrants that are listed down the side of the chart here. Of these 8, only 3 of them apply in this particular case. These top 3, what we call an 8-hour vehicular volume, a 4-hour, and then a peak hour. And we looked at which, so you can see that's the applicable column. And then we looked at each phase of the development to see if the warrants are met. And I'm going to explain them in a minute. But you can see we don't start to meet any until phase 3. And what these are is typically the 8-hour warrant is the strongest warrant. That means that for at least 8 hours out of the day, you meet certain volume thresholds. And that's both the amount of volume on the main street, but also then the amount of volume on the side street. So that's kind of taking into consideration those levels of service F that I showed before, that are how difficult is it for you to get out of the driveway. And so that's what this one, and then similarly, the 4-hour volume warrant is where you meet certain volume thresholds for 4 hours out of the day. And you can see we don't start to meet that one until phase 3. And then the peak hour warrant, a lot of times we don't apply this, and certainly if we have to go through MassDOT, which we will in this case, if we start to look and think that we want to have a signal here, that would have to be approved by MassDOT, and they typically will not approve putting in a traffic signal on the basis of just warrant 3, which means that it meets certain volume requirements for 1 hour out of the day. A lot of times you see this warrant used more when there's some kind of a shift type business, like maybe industrial uses where they have 3 shifts and there's heavy shift changes for an hour, that don't last very long, but they last long enough that they need to be able to get people in and out. So you can see we meet 2 of the 3 in phase 3, and then we meet all 3 of these in phase 4. So we have actually we met with MassDOT last week and started to discuss this idea. They have a new process called intersection control evaluation that they want us to go through and look at the location. And then we're also coordinating with them on the project that they're just beginning on Route 10 that I think Mr. Abel mentioned as well. So we're starting that coordination process because ultimately, if the signal is going to go in here, they have to approve it in any case. So we'll be coordinating with them throughout this process, and also, talking to their designers who were on the call as well. So there's some coordination happening there. I think that's all I've got. And are we holding questions until the end?
One in, if that's okay.
I can go to Mr. Graham for housing next.
We might have one quick question on the traffic for now. Let's see.
I just want to make sure I understood what you said correctly. By phase 4, the likelihood of needing a signal is high. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Hey, can I just ask one quick question too? How does the new Starbucks play into this analysis? Is it just something that you sort of figure that's background noise and it happens, there's always projects coming, or does that get measured somehow in this analysis?
The Starbucks is explicitly included. We included the volumes. We did the study for that project as well, so we included the volumes from that study as part of the no build. And then they're included in the build analysis as well. So it's explicitly included. The background growth is more for things that we just don't know about, that haven't come in to start their process with you yet.
Great, thank you. I'm sure we'll have more traffic questions, but for now we can move on.
I have one related.
Oh, sorry.
To that.
Yeah, sure, Danny.
Yeah, on the background growth and newly approved projects in the vicinity, we had East Haven. Is that the name of it? East Haven, a hot tub spa facility. It's at that intersection, the Papa George's intersection. Was that also included too? Are you guys aware of that project being approved and coming in?
It was not.
Oh,
so
okay.
we should probably I was not aware of that, so we can take a look at that and see if we should include it or if we think the background is covering us.
It's at the northwest leg of that intersection with Florence Road.
Yeah,
Florence, yeah.
It's 150 Northampton Street.
Okay.
I have more questions, but I'll hold them. I don't want to bog this down.
Plenty of time.
Wow.
Today, boy, oh boy. I cruised through there 3-4 times. There's hundreds more people.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Peter Graham, and I'm a real estate development consultant focusing in affordable housing in Western Mass and really throughout Massachusetts and wherever I'm asked to go. What I wanted to cover is it's really an opportunity a little bit to provide a little bit of education on affordability and how affordable housing gets built under the context of Sierra Vista Commons. So I'm not sure how to necessarily scroll this faster, but I will do this. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the proposed rents versus the required rents. And there was a lot of comments online that I don't disagree with at all, in the sense that it's the 80% area median income is the benchmark for which zoning deems affordable housing, kind of classifies or qualifies for the state subsidized housing inventory, which is that list that is used on 40B projects and such. To kind of meet 10% of affordability in a community, you need to have your 10% of your housing stock affordable to 80% or below area median income. So the zoning requires the affordability to meet 80%. So what I've done here is I put the 80%, one bedroom is $1,506, 2 bedroom is $1,694, and 3 bedroom is $1,882. So what that means for a household of one is an income of about $52,000. A household of 2, the income is $60,000. a household of 4 is $75,000. The proposal, as has been applied by the applicant, is to meet the 80%. However, the intent, and in order to get housing development done in Massachusetts and make the economics work, is you really have to meet the low-income housing tax credit program, and those rents are 60% AMI. And so in that, on the top of the screen, is a one-bedroom rents at $1,059, a two-bedroom rents at $1,270, a three-bedroom at $1,468. And I've written there that an income for 60% household of 2 of $45,000 assumes $13,000 and change is being used for housing cost and $31,000 for everything else. So when we talk about what is affordable, the standard is 30% of somebody's income is used in housing cost. So I'm going to scroll along. All right. So what is the rent savings with the LIHTC program? So in this slide, you'll see that the required affordability per the city at 80% is listed as $1,500 for a one-bedroom. The required program for which we're proposing to build phase 2, that the first phase of housing, requires a $1,059 rent. So that's a savings of $447 a month. In the two-bedroom, it's $424. In the three-bedroom, it's $414. Now, every year, these have some impact to change. On the right-hand side of the slide, you'll see current area market rents. Now, I'm sure 110 people watching tonight will find that those rents aren't accurate. That's basically a snapshot of Craigslist, renter.com, all the different things, and the fact that there's very little affordable or very little available in this marketplace. So those are median rental lists of a sampling that in some cases the sample was only 6 units that you could sample. So in any event, we have a current area market rents of a one-bedroom at $1,400, and that would be about a $436 savings to get into the LIHTC unit that we're proposing. And when it comes to a three-bedroom, there's very few three-bedroom units, which is almost $1,000 per month of savings when you develop using the low-income housing tax credit program. In some cases, some of those current market rents noted are whole houses, where the whole house is for rent. All right. So the target incomes that we have proposed in our application to the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is the funding mechanism for a project like this. The first phase of housing, which was 3 18-unit buildings, is the equivalent of 54 units. We proposed 16 units to meet a 30% area median income. And for these units, they would be paired with a project-based assistance voucher, which again requires no more than 30% of a income being paid on rent. And this is a requirement of the Department of Housing and Community Development. If you apply for tax credits through the state, you have to meet a minimum threshold of 30% units. It's essentially how they get deeper affordability in communities across the Commonwealth. So in the next one, 28 units would be targeted to 60% AMI. That's the low-income housing tax credit rent. And 10 units are projected to be between 80 and 120% AMI. So in this proposal, all 54 would have a deed restriction on their governing their affordability. And the interesting thing that the 80% to 120% is those rents would essentially be over market in this market. So there would be essentially public subsidy to create housing unit that essentially meets what the market has to bear a little bit. And that's a function of there just not being enough housing, period, of all kinds. You know, our community needs, and I don't just say our region needs more housing of all types. So I'm going to scroll down. So what is the relationship between Easthampton incomes and housing costs? The national median income for a 4-person household is $91,000 and change. The non-metro average, which is what we would be part of, is a $71,000 for a household of 4. In Easthampton, 80% of renter households make less than $75,000. Over 50% of renter households earn between $25,000 and $75,000. What this slide is showing, when you then look at how do these rents line up with median income, more than 95% of renter households pay less than $2,000 a month. 80% of renter households pay less than $1,500 a month, and an estimated 40% of renter households are rent burdened, meaning they pay more than 30% of their income on housing costs. These are the statistics you can find at the MHP Center for Housing, and they're essentially American Community Standard. These are census data. What it basically means is that these both 80% units that are required by the zoning that we're in front of here and the 60% are below that, are basically creating more affordability and more options than there are currently out there now. So here's the mix of affordability, again, for the 54 units that are proposed as phase 2. There are 3 one-bedrooms, 15 two-bedrooms, and 36 three-bedrooms proposed. So this is, and the other important thing for folks to realize is when it comes to affordable housing or workforce housing like we're talking about, you have to qualify for the bedroom size. So if you want a 3-bedroom unit, you have to have a household of a size that requires a 3-bedroom. And that could be grandma, mom, and 1 child, that kind of thing. And that is, so one of the things I wanted to talk about is, again, the plan overall, there's 202 overall housing units proposed in this development, the first phase of which would be the affordable. And as Mr. Abel mentioned, the application to the state is essentially a threshold to get applications submitted to the state is permitting, and the next application isn't until later in the next year. The awards take 6 or 8 months, then takes another 6 or 8 months to compile the rest of the financing pieces, and about 1.5 years to build, especially in the procurement stage we're at now. So it puts your occupancy right at that January, February of 2026. In a proposal like what is in front of you, it's essentially about a $23 million of development, and significant portion of that, over $7.9 million, would be proposed to come from the state in a couple of different, ways, and then a public-private partnership, which is what the low-income housing tax credit is. And that basically pairs up corporate interests to alleviate their tax burden to help put that equity into affordable housing across the country. So that's really the main thing I wanted to share, was that what was posted in the paper, what was posted on the website here was the 80% rents, but what is being proposed is the 60% rents. But it's the kind of thing where it's a very competitive process, and you kind of have to, you don't want to tie your hands, essentially, if that competitive process gets waylaid and all. And I think after I am done, I think it's just questions.
Can I ask a quick one on this? I have always been under the impression that the ideal way to lay out the affordable housing is sort of mixed with the market rate units. Is there any, and I realize this is probably a DHCD question more than our jurisdiction completely, but is there any concern about sort of bundling them all together?
So what you'll notice is, if we essentially are targeting a mixed income, and that is, again, a function of, if you have, in these 54 units, you've got you've 16, 30%, 28, 60%, and 10 that are up to 120% AMI. The issue, and not that it can't be done, in terms of having, let's say, an unrestricted unit, a kind of complete market unrestricted, as part of the development. Where that becomes a problem is in, believe it or not, a soft market like Easthampton. The investor community, which essentially is DHCD and the folks who actually put the equity into these affordable housing units, they don't want the actual market rents in the region to be close to the tax credit rents, which we have in this situation. While I showed you there was a savings of money of the market to the projected rents, the reality is there's so few units available in this market that's what is driving a lot of that. And the concern being that if market rents are only a few $100s over tax credit rents, you run into a kind of a soft spot where you don't want to be, where they won't want to invest.
So is the point that these are, even though they may be subsidized at the state level, there still really is a blend of sort of market rate or even over market rate as well as the lower levels?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's really the funding.
That is the intent there, absolutely. Okay. And the state, the development of the workforce housing program was originally intended for your Boston market areas where the middle, like we're talking about, 80 to 120, they were being left behind because you would either do a tax credit program or they would do a full unrestricted market. In a community like Easthampton, the state has figured that even though the program doesn't do the same thing as it does in Boston, there needs to be that middle for them to support a higher income person or household.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you.
Question about phasing. So I'm a little bit confused. So one of the prior presenters, I think, said that the bulk of the affordable housing was going to be in phase 4 in the middle over the commercial, but then you're saying it's going to be in one of the first phases. So is that when is that housing coming in? Is it distributed through all of it? So and this is where, honestly, I don't want to overspeak, but I don't know how flexible the phasing is. But for instance, the blue section with those 3 buildings is proposed to be the second phase of the development. Yes. And it is the first housing phase. Right. So all 54 units are going there?
Well, there's 54 units there. Each of those squares has 18 units.
Gotcha.
Right? And so if all goes well and we can apply for another tranche of tax credits, we can go on.
I think
we jump up just to the microphone so we can get your name and get it recorded. please? Thank you.
Frank Demarinis, the manager at Tasty Top. Those first 3 units, the 3 buildings are 54 units, and that is our application to DC. DACG. Yeah, that is our application, and that's the breakdown, what he's showing you. So it's all affordable and deed restricted, all 54 of those. If that happens, and it goes well, and the rents happen well, we're going to do another 3 units the exact same way. We just don't. We're not required to be restricted via zoning, but we do have intention to make even the next 3 buildings another 54 units that way.
So affordable.
Affordable.
So the goal is to do at least the first 3, and those will be the 54 units, which meets the minimum requirement.
Right.
But depending on how that goes, there may be even more units in a
Yes,
later
we
phase.
might do all of them that way because we're going to have the management in place. We're going to have all the maintenance all in place, and we'd rather do it all that way. I just potential for at least 132 units affordable through their program.
Okay, thank you.
That's our intent. I don't have a crystal ball if this is going to work.
Right.
I want to say we have the best team with Peter and Don, and we have a legal firm in Boston that specializes in doing this. They're very complicated financial packages, and they're very complicated with restrictions and going through the state housing to meet all the regulations that they do have. And that's why the phasing's so far out for that first 3. It's solely through the process that we have to go through to get to be able to start to build that. That's why it's so far out.
To be clear, if it doesn't go well, the other 4 units would be market rate.
The other 4 units would be regular market rate or
some mix in the middle. Yeah, okay.
But they'll all be brand new units, and they'll be very desirable in the community, I would say.
And at a bare minimum, we get the 54 units as the second phase of the project. Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
Planning board members, do you guys want to ask questions now? Do you want to open this up to the public first?
Is that the full presentation?
I believe, is that the full presentation, folks? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah, so do we want to get into our questions? Do we want to open it up for the people who came out tonight first? Or, I mean, we can't vote on this tonight no matter what, so we have another meeting anyway for questions and comments.
The public.
Okay, so why don't we open this up to the public then? Here's what I'm going to say. Again, there's going to be at least one more hearing on this, maybe more, so you don't have to speak tonight. If you do speak, I'm going to ask you to come up, give your name and address for the record. If people feel more comfortable submitting written comments, we've gotten some great written comments already. Those get distributed to all the planning board members. They're put on the website. They're distributed to the applicant. We're going to keep doing that. So that's another way to comment either after this hearing or at any point. But if people do have comments, questions, anything they want to say, I'm going to start with people in the room, and then we'll jump off to see who's on the internet that might want to comment. So anybody have any comments?
Jesse, can I just say, for people who are remote, just put your name in the chat, and then I'll form a queue, and then we'll...
Perfect. Thank you, Eli.
No questions in the chat.
Yeah, no, don't write your questions. Just write your name in the chat.
Okay, so is there anybody in the room right now who has any questions or comments? We've got a couple people. If you want to just come on up. Someone has to go first.
Hi, my name is Janet Muzzy, 3 Alden Street. I'm curious about, maybe we could put the 4 phases back up, but I'm curious how many lanes of into and out of the development are proposed?
All right. So
Travel lanes?
Yeah,
Travel lanes?
how many is it, like?
Access and
one-
egress.
Yeah,
So the tricky part here, so do you have more questions or comments?
yeah.
Okay, so what I would suggest, why don't you, because we need to get the answers from people up there at the lectern too. So maybe if you can ask your questions, we'll try to keep a list, and then someone can come up and answer them all at
Okay.
the end. If we have to do back and forth, we can, but otherwise, everyone has to move all the time. So
Okay. My other question is about the fire department only access onto Colonial. I mean, with that new condo development that went in, I mean, there's hardly any free, I mean, there's parking on both sides now. I'm kind of curious how it's going to work in an emergency with fire trucks zooming down that street.
Thank you.
all right. So anybody who talked to the fire department or can talk about the roadway width and that sort of stuff for sort of interior circulation?
it's an only emergency access, it's not.
And it may be that the Colonial Ave thing maybe is a question for the fire department instead, but if anybody can answer or speak to it, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so to answer the lanes, it's one lane in each direction for the roadway through the property.
I think specifically she was asking about the exit. So is there like a right turn lane and then a left turn lane as you exit the proposed development? I believe was that not the
Yes.
nature of the question?
Excuse me, if that was the question, then yes, the answer is yes. There's a left and right turn lane.
So 2 out, 1 in.
Correct.
And then it's one lane each direction for all the sort of interior
site
circulation.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
The fire access is, again, it's gated. It's only in an emergency. It'll rarely be used, hopefully never.
Okay.
And is there a reason why, I mean, fire trucks will also enter the main entrance, right? It's just an extra entrance, so if there's some sort of issue with
If a tree fell or
accident
if
or
there's
something,
literally something
no other way in.
completely preventing, I think the site is big enough to constitute an emergency.
Yeah, an emergency
Yeah.
entrance, okay.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, Jackie Brousseau Pereira, 39 Garfield Ave. I've been a long-time supporter of affordable housing in town. I've been on the Affordable Housing and Fair Housing Partnership for what feels like 100 years. And I'm so excited about this project, I can't even begin to say how happy I am. When I saw this in the paper, I was thrilled. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness of it, the phased-in approach, the mix of retail spaces and affordable housing. It just feels like a perfect project for Easthampton. I love that it's going to add to the tax rolls, right? We need more of a tax base here. We know that Easthampton doesn't have a lot of buildable land, so this to me feels like a perfect project in the right location. Folks who are going to be able to live in these affordable units will be close to services, close to public transportation. Like, I can't say how much I'm thrilled about this. We know from our last housing production plan that we very much need affordable and, well, all kinds of rental housing in the city of Easthampton. Again, it's located in a great spot. I'm psyched to just hear how much support for affordable housing is going into this project. I was psyched also to hear how well you described how affordable housing works. Thank you for that. I think that's always super helpful. I was doing some calculations in the back, and I know sometimes folks get a little bit worried about like too many people moving into Easthampton. Once this is built out, if you have like 200 units, and I guess it'll be like maybe 2 people each, so an additional 500 people, if they're all new, which they won't be, right? Because many of them will be here from Easthampton because we need housing. That would be like a 3% increase in population completely, which isn't going to happen because most of those people are going to already be living here. So I just want to say I'm psyched about this. We know that 40% of our rental folks are burdened with their housing. This is a really great opportunity for Easthampton, and I'm really psyched, and thank you for bringing this project forward. I hope that you'll be asking for some Community Preservation Act money to support the DHCD proposal as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody need to come up here? No. I can
Nope,
just go.
you're up.
Great. Hi. I am Gwyn Morrissey. I live at 17 Mayor Street, which I think is how you say that. I haven't known for 8 years. Why am I here? Oh, I'm delighted to be here to represent the opinion of the entire Economic Development and Industrial Commission, which is a municipal committee whose mission is to support and enhance the economic environment for current and future businesses, current and future residents, and the community at large. So this is a letter we all agreed we are enthusiastic about as of 4:30 p.m. today. The Easthampton Development and Industrial Commission, EDIC, strongly supports the initial plan for the Sierra Vista Commons development on Route 10. EDIC is acutely aware, we talk about it constantly, of the value increased housing options pose for our city in the near and long terms. We believe that this proposal will enable the city to advance its housing creation goals, including a sizable number of affordable units. Its inclusion of child-oriented activity centers represents a diversification of our community's options for parents and young people in town, and spaces for restaurants and retail support our continued growth and economic development activity. We understand that the proposal presents the city with traffic management challenges and that there are likely to be community concerns about development of the site itself, as well as confusion around the definition of affordable housing. In our role as advocates for sustainable development and responsible housing policies, we look forward to supporting the efforts to respond to and mitigate those concerns. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
Sam Nelson, 25 Highland Ave. I appreciate everybody else's
I'm
comments.
sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak up?
Sam Nelson, 25 Highland Ave.
Thank you.
Lifelong resident in Easthampton. I actually grew up in the house that I own now. Purchased it after my mother passed away, God rest her soul. My mother was actually at the forefront of Stop and Shop from going into that pad site. At this point, I'm kind of sad that she did, because this is way worse. I can tell you right now, with 100% certainty, I know that parcel of land where phase 2 and phase 3 are going better than anyone. There is no one that knows that parcel of land better than I. I've been walking around, playing around that parcel of land since I was 10 years old. I was out there yesterday. I'm still waiting on answers on why a bridge was built over that creek, which is not an intermittent creek. It is a year-round creek. Why 4 vernal pools were destroyed, which I brought to the Conservation Commission, who then brought it to the DEP. Because they were not delineated as vernal pools, they were allowed to get away with it. I can tell you right now, they were vernal pools. They are year-round pools. I have photographic evidence of it, and I have photographs from yesterday. They did a poor job of destroying those pools because they are refilling. Probably shouldn't say that, because they're going to go back out there and do something, refill them. That phase 2 and phase 3 portion of this project cannot be allowed to happen. That land is wet. What are we doing to our town? I've seen this town completely change since I was a kid. There is almost no wild land left. None. When I was a kid, Northampton Street was almost all trees. That parcel on the right where the post office is, where Cumbies is, that was all forest. All of it. We have nothing left. We're scratching at parcels here and there to be developed. Why? We don't need the tax resources that bad. We had a fatality on Northampton, a double fatality on Northampton Street this year because the traffic is the worst it is anywhere in town on that stretch of road. Please explain to me how that tiny stretch of road is going to be able to support that many vehicles, because that is a lot of vehicles. Between the Roots gymnastics, and if anybody's been to Roots, if anybody has kids, I have 6. You know what the traffic can be like getting in and out of Roots when there's an event going on. That stretch of road can't handle that. You can't. And then you add on residential vehicles, business vehicles, and visitors, you name it. It can't take it. That creek is very sensitive. It feeds into a river delta in the rear, on the east side of it, which is just above water level for the Manhan River. It's not sustainable. It's an absolutely atrocious idea for that part of the environment. So there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered by this company on things that they've done over this past year. I know that I've seen animals out there that I don't see now. Since those vernal pools were gone, I take my kids out there all the time. We spend most of our time in the woods, whether it's behind our house on our side of Island Ave or across the way in those fields. This is an absolute travesty. I've been talking to neighbors that have just moved in that couldn't be here tonight. They told me straight up, if they had known that this project was going to happen, they would not have purchased those homes. I'm putting you on notice. I will be a staunch opponent to this project throughout. And I've been somebody who's lived here on that street since 1988, but I've lived in this town my entire life. The only one that has lived on that street that's in this room longer than me is the Ledusers. And they've taught most of the kids, or Miss Leduser taught most of the kids in this town. I understand phase 1, driving range part. Yeah, it's underused. Something needed to be done with it. But phase 2 and phase 3 on the other side of the creek, when it's starting to head over towards behind McDonald's, the environmental impact alone is unimaginable. I understand that I need to talk to the Conservation Commission about that, but this is getting me extremely worked up because I know how delicate it is back there. And things have already been done back there to maybe hide the impact. So this is something that I would really like the planning board to consider strongly when they're considering approving licenses for or permits for that part of the development. It just, it can't sustain it. That part of the ecosystem, it can't.
Thank you. I know a lot of the CONSCOM stuff is before the CONSCOM. Is there someone who can speak to that at least 30,000 feet, sort of give us a general overview, or not here tonight?
And he also discussed traffic, so
From the
that as well.
applicant, I think you're talking to the applicant, right?
Yeah. Do we not have people here who can really?
Share where you're at.
Before the Conservation Commission. I'm not sure what the specific question is, but I think the Conservation Commission is going to handle all those issues.
Okay.
I will share that I have a similar concern because being on the Conservation Commission previously before the Planning Board, we know that the issues that Highland Avenue has with flooding in their basements, real issues with stormwater. So I'm going to be definitely focusing on stormwater management in that back parcel so that Highland Avenue residents do not have additional stormwater concerns in their houses.
The whole street had major issues when the post office was put in. The water
Yeah.
table was pushed.
Right. So we know that has historical.
We've had that come before us a couple different times.
Yeah, on different applications, there has been issues with proposed developments impacting that Highland Avenue neighborhood. So we just want to make sure that, anything that's proposed, there's no additional impacts post-construction.
There's also the question of the Gall property, which abuts this. That development was shot down because that land was delineated wet. This is encroaching on that parcel. I mean, anybody with common sense can see that the writing's on the wall. Eventually, they're going to want another outlet from there, and there is a paper road that goes. There's two that go onto Highland Ave. One almost all the way down the street, and one towards the top of the street.
That's not part of the application now, though, correct?
It's not, but we all know how this type of stuff goes. That portion of the project, it can't be allowed.
Yeah, so the wetlands part is completely outside of our jurisdiction, but we know that that's happening, and we're following along with it. The stormwater part is sort of both of us together, so CONSCOM takes the primary lead on a stormwater plan review, and we also give it an independent look as well, so that part of it is definitely part of it, but also, just generally sort of tree removal, delineation, location of the slope on the back of the site, all those things are things that are in our purview.
The trees that are at the northeastern portion of the Phase 3 project, those trees are hundreds of years old.
Yeah.
They're 150 foot tall pines that are actually holding the ground up from feeding a creek bed that fills in the spring.
Yeah, and those are two things, those are two issues that we definitely have to get to. Is one is just the removal of the trees, and also what the tree root system is doing to hold that slope up. We've dealt with this in projects in the past where there's buildings on the side of a slope, and it poses environmental and safety concerns. So, it's certainly something we're going to have to get into.
According to this map, the 50-foot buffer is actually 50 foot from a 100-foot cliff that goes straight down to the Manhattan.
Drops right down to the Manhattan, yeah.
You take those trees out of there, there's nothing left to hold up the cliff. And you're going to have major erosion problems that go down into the Manhattan and that sensitive river delta.
It's definitely one of the things we're going to have to get into much more deeply going forward.
You guys are not you're not dealing with the stormwater runoff or the sewage, any of that stuff, because I know that the water department's had issues with that section of the drainage because there's storm drains back there, not sewer lines back there. They've had issues with those for years. It's the end of the line that's coming from the rest of the town that's heading to a sewage treatment plant. They're down there almost every fall trying to clear those lines out because they're so congested. My question is what's the cost of the taxpayers going to be when they have to completely revamp and expand that system? Because of the added runoff from, it's not just residences, it's businesses that are going to be constantly feeding into that system. But with the traffic stuff, that section of road just can't handle it. It is the most dangerous section of road in town, and I drive it every single day.
Yeah, and I think there's a reason that the state has identified it as a strip of the highway that they need to improve, and they're working on it, which is good, but I think we need to figure out what the impact on it will be if we improve it, but also add a project of this size. I think that's part of the analysis here, for sure.
Improvement's all well and good, but it's what do we want to see happen to our town? Is this really where we want to see our town go? We're starting to look like a very overdeveloped, tiny little parcel of land. You drive the Route 10, 141 corridor, There's nothing but buildings. It's nothing but traffic day in and day out. It's so congested these days. I do what I can to go around those roads to drive over to East Street just to avoid that section because it's so bad. And it doesn't matter what you do to try and expand it or improve it, there's only so much room. Then you're gonna start encroaching on people's private land, and you're gonna have to go within the domain and move the road out and expand it. If you keep doing this, you're gonna need a 4-lane road on that section of town. You know, we put in the co-op, got the combis. Something like this, it's not sustainable for traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room want to come right up?
Roger Anderson, 50 Westview Terrace, just a factual kind of question. Can somebody maybe, with the map up there, I know it's not on the map, but point out about where the Manhattan River is and about how far from the edge of the plan it is, even if it's an estimate?
Can somebody pull that map up and help us with that?
I remember it's 150 feet from one of the phase.
Yeah.
The traffic presentation had a version where you can see it. Yeah.
We can just rapidly
I can tell you it's greater than two.
We got there's a paper map. Want to use the old school one?
Manhattan River is approximately.
Where is he?
Which is roughly, what, 150 feet, 200 feet?
Greater than 200 feet.
Greater than 200 feet away from what? The property line?
Limit of work.
From the limit of work.
Was that 250 feet from the edge, from the building, or from the edge of the green there?
From the limit of work.
Okay, so
That dark green line.
about 250 feet from that building?
Yep.
Okay.
200 or 250?
200.
200.
200.
Sir, the last building,
Hold.
about 40 feet from that.
Sir, we got comments up here, right? I'm sorry, it just falls apart quickly. Yes, please.
I'm Garrett Stover, 55 Fairview Avenue, Northampton, Mass. I always apologize for being a carpetbagger. I've been working with Biscama Conservation Trust as a volunteer for almost their entire 40-year existence. One of the main priorities of Biscamic is to protect the waterways in town. We have several properties on the Manhattan River and its tributaries, and one of them happens to be directly the northernmost part on that map. There's a trail that's about 400 feet directly across the river. That building will be visible from our trails. It's a really unique refuge for Easthampton residents. It's a chance to walk along a quiet and secluded part of the river. And this would be a drastic change to that. We did submit extensive comments about proximity and a great deal of other matters, some of which are environmental, some of which are not. But I want to maybe take a slightly different tone, that I really appreciate that the developers have spent a great deal of time talking to the city hall. And at the moment in City Hall, housing is the top dog in the kennel. But if you look at Easthampton's planning documents, master plan, open space and recreation plan, many, many public surveys over the last 20 years, conservation.
Sorry.
Is it you?
Yep, sorry. Yeah, 1 second. It's not, it's just me.
Apologies.
Nothing wrong with the building. Sorry.
Chris, you can go in that back room.
Chris, you could just let us know if you don't want to be in the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Not my brain freeze. Sorry, interrupting. So I find it disappointing that the conversations that happened did not reflect that deep community desire to not only protect and preserve open spaces, agricultural land, of which most of this parcel consists of prime and statewide important soils, which would all be built upon. But also, the city has constantly expressed a desire for smart growth. And one of the things that involves is staying away from places that should not be developed and develop areas that have services and access to transportation with dense and walkable development. And I'm kind of confounded that this development looks like something out of 1970. I spent 4 or 5 hours pushing buildings around from the footprint of the proposed buildings, and you can fit all of the buildings, all of the uses on entirely in the highway business zone. Yes, it means taller buildings and combining uses, but it's very achievable. And if you did that, not only would you save the developer a lot of money in terms of building roadways and elaborate bridge crossings, but you would have a walkable neighborhood where people could bicycle. They could get to the bus route. I think there's a bus route along Northampton Street. Hope there is.
It's rerouted around that section, I think, these days. It goes on Pleasant Street.
Anyway, so I really fervently hope, and the trust fervently hopes, that a more broadly based conversation that takes into account more of the interests of the city can happen, and that this development, I love the affordable housing. We absolutely need it, but it can be done in a much better, less environmentally destructive way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your letter. It really did have a lot of good points in there, good questions and comments. Anybody else in here with comments or questions? There will be more opportunities. Okay. So, Eli, do we have a list online? People ready to go?
Let's start with Kim McQuaid. Kim McQuaid, you can unmute yourself and comment. Yep.
Hello, my name is Kayam Jamrat McQuaid. I'm a member of the Easthampton Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership, as well as the coordinator for the Easthampton Housing Coalition. I'm also a lifelong resident of Easthampton. I'm here tonight to speak in support of this development proposal, as I think it will contribute to the development of our community by providing much needed housing and additional community amenities for the benefit of our residents and local economy. This project has the potential to bring much needed affordable and market rate housing to our community, which will help to alleviate the pressure on the housing market and allow more people to stay and thrive in Easthampton. As many of you may know, we are in the midst of a housing crisis, and projects that provide a diverse range of options, such as the one in question, will help counteract the shortage of high-quality affordable housing in our community. This project is also very much in line with the goals set forward in the 2021 Easthampton Housing Production Plan, approved by City Council and the Planning Board. Census data shows that Easthampton's population is shrinking, and projects like this will develop our community in a smart and sustainable way. This is not putting us anywhere near in danger of growing beyond our means, this is addressing a long-standing shortage of new construction and development in communities like ours. This development will be a great thing for Easthampton residents and small businesses, and I look forward to being a part of this conversation around this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and now Laura Baker.
Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Laura Baker. I am the Real Estate Development Director for the Valley Community Development Corporation. And I am probably, like many of you, just starting to learn about this particular project. What I wanted to speak to tonight is my experience also as an affordable housing developer and an operator of affordable rental housing. We are at crisis level with lack of supply. And so at Valley, we have affordable rental housing for which we have wait lists of about 1,500 people. And so people will wait often years to get adequate affordable housing. So I just wanted to kind of add that to the mix, that we are facing a very pressing shortage of housing, especially affordable housing in the region. Thanks very much.
Laura, for the record, can you state your address?
Sure. I live at 10 South Main Street in Haydenville.
Thanks.
All right, and Jana Tetral. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jana Tatro. I'm the chair of the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership here in Easthampton. I live at 52 Pomeroy Street. I'm here tonight to speak in support of this project. I think it's a really exciting opportunity for the city of Easthampton. As mentioned previously, and as mentioned in our housing production plan, the city of Easthampton needs housing. It needs affordable housing. It needs all kinds of housing. And as previously mentioned, this site was identified in the housing production plan as one feasible for affordable housing. This project is sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity for the city of Easthampton. It helps support many of our affordable housing goals. I want to thank the developer for their thoughtful consideration of this project. From reading and reviewing our housing production plan and taking it into consideration when developing this project, and also for your thoughtful consideration of mix of bedroom sizes. I think having a large number of 3-bedroom apartments is enormously beneficial to the city of Easthampton and very much needed for family housing. I know the inclusion of units at the 30% income level are required by the state, but I can't stress enough to planning board members, community members, that the highest need that we have for affordable housing is for those units for our very low income residents. There are very long waiting lists at our housing authority and for state subsidies and mobile vouchers. And so those units are really needed in the city. And so I'm really excited to see that as part of the mix. I'm also really excited that the developer is considering more units than are necessary and that additional phases might include more affordable units. That's pretty unusual, and so I am really excited that that's something that they're considering. And so again, I'm really excited about this project. The Housing Partnership is very much excited to learn more and to be more a part of this process. Thank you.
Thanks, Jana.
All right, Margaret Kennedy.
Come on.
Margaret Kennedy, are you there?
Meg Kennedy, yeah, I've raised their hand.
Sorry. Oh, she wrote Margaret Kennedy. Meg Kennedy? Nope. Scott Tunderman?
Hi, Scott Tunderman at 52 Westview Terrace in Easthampton. I want to bring up something that I don't think I've heard about, which is just that the scope of this development seems to be much larger than anything else that exists in Easthampton. And I hear a lot of folks speaking in favor of the affordable housing, which is certainly worth supporting. But It just seems like a whole campus of development that includes a ton of retail space and really just is extraordinary to the character of Easthampton. So part of my question is whether this approval is about all 4 phases, or whether phases 1 and 2 could be approved, and whether subsequent phases may or may not, and whether the developer would pursue the project without all 4 phases being approved. It seems like, some of it could be approved further from the environmentally sensitive areas and not the whole rest of the thing. But it really seems like something, I guess I'm not aware of anything else in Easthampton that is like a project of this scope. And it feels like it might change the character of the town in a pretty meaningful way. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Scott. At least from the planning board's perspective, the whole project is one application. It doesn't mean that we can't have discussions about the scope of it or how it's phased. We might not even agree on what phase 1, 2, 3, 4, how many there are. But it has been presented as one complete package to be approved.
Is it technically a site plan approval and a special permit?
Two site plan approvals.
But still one application.
But one project, right. All right, do we have Meg Kennedy?
Yeah, Meg, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I did figure it out. Thank
Okay,
you. I'm
great.
not familiar with Google. I'm a Zoom person, so can you hear me fine?
Yeah, if you can just give us your address just for the record, please.
Yeah, 31 Plymouth Ave. I would just like to say that I did not live in this residence when Stop and Shop was on the table. But I have been here since 2018. And most recently, the development of the colonial properties, condos, happened. And I'd just like to say my yard is now completely destroyed thanks to all of the voles that have moved in, which is no one else's problem but mine now. Listen, I'm very concerned. First thing I heard was that the studies were done for traffic in 2021. I would welcome, I believe her name was Carrie, I'd welcome you to come on back and study them again now that we are all back to work. I think a lot of people still were working from home at that time. It can take me, 15 to 20 minutes to get from the traffic light at Florence Road down to where I turn into Colonial. I'm very concerned that the Mass DOT does not warrant a light until phase 4. The construction just for developing 2 condominium buildings here at the end of Colonial created a lot of traffic, and this development is very concerning. There is a lot that's going to be going in there. And you said the first phase would be beginning around 2026. Is that correct?
No.
That is correct.
This is
first housing.
So this could go for the next 6 years, 7 years? What are we talking?
That's our
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption.
Okay. Another concern I have is why the fire department, and again, I'm no expert, I'm a cook, but why the fire department would want to have to speed down Colonial Ave, open up a gate to go into this community instead of going around the bend and into their main entrance.
They're not here to speak to that right now, but I can tell you that from prior projects, that's sort of a last-ditch sort of option. The idea is that there isn't really access there. There's a gate that they have a key to, so if there's a car accident in the middle of the intersection for the main entrance or something like that, that they have another way and they're not just prevented from getting it at all. I think the fire department agrees with all of us that they hope they never have to use that entrance or probably visit the site at all.
Traffic, if there was an emergency, they would need that. That speaks volumes right there. And I just don't understand, I understand affordable housing and housing for people, but I don't know when when it's going to be enough in Easthampton. Southampton has lots of open land. West Hampton, lots of open land. Why do we have to keep expanding? Why? The gentleman from Highland Ave, he's so right. Everything that goes on in those fields, and I get it. We can't save all the deer and the bears and the bobcat that comes through. But when do we say enough is enough in this town? How much do we keep adding? We haven't solved water issues. Northampton Street's development is still not, it's proposed, but it's not a done deal with the state yet. Does that affect that proposal? How is that proposal even good anymore if we allow this development? So I just ask you all to really consider, this is a huge development, and it needs a lot of consideration.
Thank you, Meg. Okay, there were a couple questions there I think might be worth asking. Carrie, can you talk a little bit about the traffic data and why we think 2021 is still sort of reliable?
Relevant.
Yeah, so what I said was we collected the data at Florence, and so the northern intersection was collected in September of 2021 as part of the Starbucks project. We did collect new data at West Street this year, just last month, and that was used, and we made it we adjust basically looking at the volumes. So there was an adjustment made for the 2021 data. So we don't think that there was a problem. MassDOT actually has a process because we have that they've outlined, because we have been dealing with COVID related, differences in traffic volumes from what was pre-COVID. So we followed that process with our traffic volumes and traffic counts.
Okay, thanks. The other thing that Meg raised that I think is helpful, and it's one of the complicating factors here, and I don't know if this is a planning department or an applicant, but sort of the interplay of the potential design study for the Route 10 upgrade by MassDOT and how that may or may not be affected by the project, for better or for worse. Is there somebody from the applicant, or?
I mean, I can speak to, this is Carrie again, we did talk to MassDOT last week and start that coordination process. We understand that they're at the very beginnings of their, sort of study and design on what to do on Northampton Street. So there's going to be ongoing coordination. We will eventually, as was stated, have to get an access permit from them for the driveway. So, basically what we're designing and what they are going to be designing are going to have to work together. And so, I feel like we left that meeting in a good place to continue, to talk with them as we're going through this process with you, and also, later with them.
And so my understanding is that the funding for the design, like the analysis, has been approved, and it has like a project number and all of that, but it doesn't guarantee anything will ever get done. I'm looking at you, Jeff, just because you might answer this better, but that's anything that they come up with may or may not be solved if they get budgeting for that in a future year or something down the road, no pun intended, right?
Right. So it's early, as Ms. Pike said. There is a design process underway. So we have to understand that this road is controlled by Mass DOT. So the city can't take its own initiative and start a road project because it's going to be their work. There was a mention of the double fatality, the pedestrian deaths. Had an immediate reaction from MassDOT, and so they initially took a step to begin an interim project, which was 3 new pedestrian crosswalks as a kind of an immediate, and MassDOT, so things are not quick, but it was an immediate process was initiated for the pedestrian safety improvements. And I will say that a project like this will elevate the project in their terms to speed up their design process and make it more fundable across the state. I think one of the things that, I think there's legit concerns that have been mentioned, but across the state, Mass DOT has, hundreds of roadways that need millions of dollars of work. But the combination of a tragedy, a pedestrian death, and a larger project is what will elevate the project faster to the funding source. And so, there's details that have to get ironed out here, but in general, that is how a project gets kind of elevated in the list. And that's important because I think we've all identified that there are some concerns about Northampton Street. So this is one avenue. I think it is the access permit that Ms. Pike mentioned that will be something that this board should drill down on at a subsequent meeting to understand what's involved when Mass DOT looks at an access permit and what would be their review process as this development builds out. They will have the authority to talk to the developer about what's required. So that's some navigating that we should do together as a group as we get a little further along.
Okay. Frank, did you have something else to add on that?
Yeah, that meeting we had with DOT was literally with 13 engineers, very, very intelligent people. And what we did is we set the 2 pad sites in the front back, and there's a 30-foot grassway there. So they're talking about adding like a bike lane or a passenger or some type of major sidewalk of some sort. So we accommodated that in our design, and we talked about they were going to maybe move the telephones back. And again, we accommodated those needs already. But they control all that. They're going to put in their plans. They have our engineering drawings. They have our curb cut locations. They like the location. We have great site distances, everything. So we can't work at them we can't work with them at any higher level than we already are right now. They have other constraints. If they're going to add more width to the roadway, they have way bigger problems along the roadway with Starbucks now, how that was designed, and Dunkin' Donuts and other structures that are really close to the road. So we are working with them and will work with them. And the other point I wanted to make is the curb cut permit that we apply for in phase 1, we're going to have to apply for that on every building permit. Every time we file for a new structure on site, we have to reapply for that curb cut permit, and that's their opportunity to interject again traffic-wise. So it's not something that they give us one permit and they walk away. They're going to be involved with this at every phase of the project, not phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Every building structure, they'll be involved with it.
Do we have any idea what their timeline is on this Route 10 project? I mean, I'm just trying to think like chicken and egg here. Like, if we're approving something and then MassDOT makes it change, you got to come back in, or
ultimately that's their right of way. They're going to tell us.
They're going to do whatever they want to do.
Whatever they want to do.
Right. No, I'm just.
And they're going to tell me whatever they want me to do too.
Right.
So
I'm just also trying to think timeline-wise. If we're getting to a point of approving something and a plan gets approved.
You just make everything contingent on getting approval from DOT.
Right. Obviously, that's like an easy way to do that. And then it may or may not have to come back before us if there's changes.
And I'm assuming that collaboration includes a signal light.
Well, again, they don't want the signal light there until they want it.
Until they need it, right.
Until they need it. They don't want it there in advance. It's another light that they have to maintain and all that kind of stuff associated with it, or analyze the sequence with the 2 lights to the south and to the north of it. So they specifically, if they're going to want it, they're going to want it at a certain time. And maybe they're going to want us to adjust the other lights so they're in sequence. There's a million things. Like I said, there was 13 traffic engineers all talking amongst themselves in this other language that I can't really understand. So, but they have a plan.
Okay, thank you.
We're being transparent with them. We're giving them all the information as accurately as possible as we can give it to them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moving parts here. I understand that. All right, we got a couple more people, looks like.
Yeah, so Jeff Cernak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Jeff Cernak. I'm one of the owners of 102 Northampton Street. First of all, I wanted to just talk about the traffic a little bit. When we had the dealership open, trying to make a left turn onto Northampton Street anywhere between 3 and 6 p.m., well, you might as well bring a snack. Otherwise, your sugar will go low waiting to make that turn. So You should definitely, the traffic is definitely a huge concern on that street. Number two, I looked at the overview plan and I didn't see any details of what's across the street. So I have a question about where your curb cut is located and what's across the street from that. What does it align with?
Can somebody speak to that? Because there is, I'm blanking on the road all of a sudden. There's a street. Mountain View. Mountain View. Yeah, Mountain View is sort of generally across there. Can someone talk about where the actual entrance is relative to Mountain View on the other side of the street? Or what is on the other side of the street?
Anyone?
Yeah, it's coming out of the proposed development. It is offset a little to the left, so it's not directly across.
Do we know what a little bit is? I mean, are we talking 100 feet, 50 feet, 5 feet?
I would say less than 50
Maybe we need someone to take a look at that for the next meeting. That
Yeah,
could
we
be
could
the
definitely
first
look into
specific
that.
item on your list. Let's do that to give us an idea, because I think that's a good point.
Yeah, if it's across from the entrance to Cernak, the old Cernak building, or not, which is now being.
Yeah,
used by
and there's a
others.
bunch of driveways over there too. So
There
if we
is.
can get, it looks like on all of the plans on here, you've got everything on your side of Route 10 mapped out with the side streets and everything. But if we can see what exists just right across as far as curb cuts, that would be really helpful. Jeff, are you done? Are you still there?
That was my big question. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and then I saw Meg Kennedy again.
Yep.
Yes, I'm going backwards because I have missed a few meetings, but what ended up with the Starbucks driveway? They originally wanted one entrance and exit in the same space. It was suggested that they loop around. What's happening there?
They have a single entrance and exit.
A single entrance and a single exit.
It's split.
It's split.
Yeah, one
similar to
entrance, one exit.
McDonald's.
It's one way.
So like Burger King.
Or McDonald's. More like McDonald's. The Burger
Yeah.
King is a shared.
McDonald's.
Yeah.
Burger
Going
King comes in
around.
and out the same entrance. McDonald's goes in one side and out the other, like Starbucks.
The loop. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I don't see anyone else in here with questions now. Oh, all right, more people. Come on up.
A comment, not a question, but
Name and address, please.
Roger Anderson, 50 Westview Terrace. I would really urge the, city government and the citizens not to allow this to become a battle between affordable housing interests and conservation and land interests. They both seem really essential. People have to have a place to live, and once we do have a place to live, we have to have places to go and be in nature, and the character of the town is important to people who do have a house now and people who will have one with the affordable housing. So I would just really urge that we don't end up pitting one against the other, but try and look for mutual solutions. Something on the lines of what Garrett Stover was requesting, but and that doesn't have to be it, but just anything that takes both into account.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there another hand over here?
Hi, I'm Molly Goodwin, also at 50 Westview Terrace, and I'm basically echoing what Roger just said. I'm a 20-year board member on Piscomic Conservation Trust. I'm a 40-plus year clinical social worker, so I can really understand both sides. But I've been living here for about 27 years. When I moved in, it was all farms along East Street, and the plain section was all land. So I've seen it change incredibly, and I think we really want to think about what do we want our town to be, because it's a gorgeous place. It has a wonderful mix of land and growth, and I think it's important that they both continue and that we find a balance between those two, because I don't think we want to end up with no open space. Garrett said it very poetically that It's important to be able to get out into the woods. It's important to find those places. We have some wonderful properties with Postamic. If you haven't found them, let us know. And we want to keep that going, and we're expanding some of our properties to a place that will be impacted by this development. And so I think they're important that we consider both. And I'd also just like to say, I don't know how written in stone the name is, but Sierra View, I just can't relate to. I lived in California for a long time. When I think Sierra, I think that, 6,000 plus feet. And if there's some way to keep the, the town feel in the name would be great. So,
Thank you. All right, I see two more names online there.
Yep, Marty Klein.
Hi, I'm Marty Klein. I live at 7 Stone Path Lane, Easthampton. I've also been a board member of Pascomet Conservation Trust for over 20 years. I strongly support the comments that we, the trust, sent to the planning board, and also Garrett Stover's remarks tonight. Here's a couple things that bother me, is that a large portion of the soils on the site are Class A farmland. Those will be paved over. We'll never see those again. They'll be gone. You don't make new farmland. I hear the word sustainable tossed around, and I just don't see it in this development. As Garrett mentioned, it's like a development from the 1970s. Where's the alternative energy? Solar on the site or any other things like that. So tell us how it's sustainable. I would like to know that. Are you using sustainable building materials? I'm also concerned about potential impacts to the Manhan, which has been a focus of our work for the past 40 years. And erosion, runoff, and ways that the Manhan can be impacted are concerning. Let's see. Well, I just also like to say what Molly said. I think the name Sierra Vista is an insult to the city because you're going to be killing the view there. So to call it Mountain View, it's pretty bad. I'm sorry, but anyway, that's my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Okay, so I think in there was questions about sort of runoff and slope stuff at the back onto the Manhan, and also questions about sustainability, alternative energy sources. Is that something you guys want to answer now, or you want to put that off till the next meeting, or both?
Each one of the buildings, the apartment buildings, will have solar panels up on the roof. And we're going to use the most efficient heat pump systems that they make. It's like according to Army Corps, is the second best that's available with today's technology. So that's more of our sustainable, like in that aspect. And we're going to use the most modern day construction materials. There'll be a composite cement composite material for the sidings that's rated to last for a lifetime. And the other question that with the drainage, we're doing a full drainage review with Concom, and we are staying away from the slopes, and we're going to create a slope plans because it got brought up so many times. We are staying significant distance away from those slopes and not cutting trees down. I mean, I want to say there might be a handful, 3 or 4 trees that are getting cut down on a sloped area. We stayed up on top of it. And the last thing is there is, you look at that, the rendering, there's a lot of green space. There's a natural corridor that goes through the site. We have one crossing because we have to access it. And the crossing was designed in accordance with the Army Corps of Engineer standards, so animals can go underneath it freely. It's a 19-foot span and about 6 foot high, so you can even have larger size animals that can get through it. And that ties into the main corridor from the Manhan that cuts across the site. And as you can see, the back part of the parcel, there's a lot of green area there. And I think we'll come with the percentages of open space the next compared to paved surfaces of building surfaces.
Yeah, if you have some details about the solar and the building materials, that might be helpful too, because I'm not sure that made it into the application. I guess it's kind of.
It's part of, a lot of it's part of the approval with DCF, but we will add it. We'll add that in, and we have drawings of it already.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Can I?
Yep.
Just comment? Okay, so the Piscataway Trust wrote a fantastic letter, and we've heard a lot of comments from members of the board or friends. And I would just like to make a suggestion, and I hope I'm not jumping your process, that at the next meeting, the applicant try to do their best to respond to each of the comments that were in that letter, and also the letter, since I'm here, throwing it out, that came in from the conservation agent. Those two are, I think, critical points. Now, I know that this is a collaborative process. There's a lot of interest here. I know there's some things you might not be able to do anything about there, or that you may feel are unreasonable for you to do anything about, or you feel that you can really work with the community to come up with an option. I think that it's going to be a great sign of faith to show that you're addressing each and every one, to just make comment on it. Maybe there's something that can be done about the view. Maybe there's something that can be done about the slopes and the runoff, and so many components. But just hearing your voice on every issue, I think will make everyone feel, I don't know if it'll make them feel better, but at least heard. And that, you know, I think you're an applicant, and I feel very positive about it, that's willing to work with our community in making this happen. Has already put a tremendous amount of effort into this. And if we can go the extra mile to make sure that we at least talked about every point, and maybe come up with a potential solution, how we might shift it or not shift it, or do something to come up with a plan. And I'd love to hear you at the next meeting addressing those two letters item by item.
Jamie,
We were planning to do that.
Did I say that?
conservation.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know a lot of those letters came in today, so I totally get that. And
We want to do a very holistic approach and address all of them at the same.
that would be excellent.
And he just brought up a great point that I did say conservation agent, and I meant the 3-page letter that came in from Bob Parent.
Bob Parent, yeah.
From Bob Parent, right?
Yeah.
Which is a separate.
Thank you. I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesse, we have a question in the chat. I'm not sure if you want to get to that.
Is it Meg Kennedy who has her hand raised too?
Yeah.
Okay, so she can ask.
Can I just say, people at home, if you could not use the chat to ask questions, but raise your hand.
Yeah.
But Meg, do you want to ask that question?
Yeah, I just thought you were wrapping up, so I just threw it in the chat.
Yeah, no worries.
He mentioned heat pumps, and I'm just curious, what other source will there be to heat those residential units? Because I have a propane tank in the condominium site that could blow up this whole neighborhood that is above ground. And I'm just curious, because I don't think that they're going to be running solely on heat pumps, but maybe they can. So could he answer that, please?
You want me to?
Someone, yeah, please.
The heat pumps are electric driven. The only thing that will be gas fired is the hot water system. It's not the heat, just the hot water system. And they'll be underground propane tanks, and they'll be licensed and permitted with the fire department. And we've already made the fire department aware of it. And because it's just the hot water, they're not large tanks at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would add that we normally, as part of our process, will request an opinion from the fire department.
Yeah.
Sometimes police department too,
Yeah.
so that'll be a part of the process.
You want to come up one more time here?
Sam Nelson, Highland Advocate. I had a question for the planning board. Was the planning board aware that they were issued a cease and desist order this spring?
We the stuff that's happened before CONSCOM,
Do you guys not converse with the Conservation Commission?
we do. I know that there's ongoing stuff there, but it's not our jurisdiction, so it's kind of, they handle that, and we.
I just want you to consider that fact, that the company was issued cease and desist orders in the spring for their actions on the property. And the bridge that's being spoke of, again, I was out there yesterday, it's about a 2.5 foot clearance over that active creek, not intermittent, which is on the plans. It's a full-time, year-round active creek that does feed into the Manhan and that river delta down the basin. But I don't know if you guys were aware, but they were issued a cease and desist and have still yet to remedy the issues.
Okay, thank you. So we can get into some questions if people want to. We can also keep our questions till next meeting. I'm okay with either. The two thoughts I wanted to discuss first so we can get things going is whether we think we want a peer review of the traffic analysis. I know, Danny, you looked a lot at that.
I could go on for a couple hours just on that.
I mean, do we think that that's worthwhile doing? Because if it is, I'd rather not wait until January to discuss it and try to do it now.
I think if we at least have the discussion of it next meeting, we can make that call after the discussion. I think
Would you folks have an objection to a peer review of the traffic? Obviously, you'd rather not do it, I know, but.
I just don't think it's necessary because Mass DOT, like I said, they got 13 engineers that were at a meeting that they're going to be reviewing it, and nothing your peer reviewer is going to say is going to change anything with DOT.
All right, so let's save that issue. I guess we can talk about it. Yeah, Jeff.
Well, just one. I know that Member Hartman kind of suggested you have a long list, but there could be some potential value of trying to summarize some of your questions for the applicant's consultant now, just to see if some of them can be responded to. And then at the next meeting, because otherwise that would just elongate it a little bit. If you're willing to tolerate, I know it's. I saw all those highlighted marks there, but.
And Harry, I don't mean to leave you out of this, so unmute if you want to chime in on any of this. But the only other issue I want to talk about now is if we think it'd be helpful to do a site visit, because.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Again, I mean,
I would be for it.
I'm usually in favor of that.
Especially with the rains coming up soon would be good.
Well, it's harder. It gets harder and harder as the after work visit becomes dark.
Yeah, so it has to be
but it's like a weekend kind of thing.
It'd have to be a weekend.
But
So it'll be covered.
I would still be for it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, would you be amenable to a site visit of some sort?
Love it, yeah.
Okay. I mean, the truth is, I don't know that we're going to be able to get it scheduled before our January 3rd meeting anyway. So it might be something we do after that, but.
You want to hang it on Christmas?
Yeah. But I just wanted to raise that. I think it makes sense too. So maybe we give that some thought to do sometime in January after that meeting.
Yeah, I think it would seem pretty unanimous.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so I guess, Danny, you probably have the most helpful feedback on the traffic at least so that they can think about that
I
for
will
next time.
summarize something just for, just
reserving your rights to
courtesy
ask
for
other
the
questions
applicant
later.
to not waste time in between meetings. And right now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, where do we start? Well, some of it's just kind of the flawed nature of such heavy reliance on IT trip generation. I mean, specifically, like just for example, I guess, like the code 495, some of those graphs and equations are derived off of 1 or sometimes 4 studies and at most 10. So some of it's kind of you're relying heavily on such, it's not quite garbage in, garbage out. It's a little bit of a flawed process that has been followed extremely well. Full credit to whoever prepared this. It's been followed extremely well, but there's inherent flaws in the process, and I think heavily relying on just this to tell us if it's going to work or not is more my point. So if anyone else is familiar with trip generation, they'll probably know a little bit more. But some of these studies, again, for 495 code, which is the recreation, I'm just picking one because I don't have enough time here, but those studies are done for anywhere from 1980 to 2010. That's the data that, again, that's supplying the gravity model that's predicting the traffic that's going to be drawn in from this development, one piece of this development, right? Some of that data is 40 years old, and largely, I think on this one in particular, some of the data is from Canada, Arizona. It's not Massachusetts, it's not Western Mass, right? So that's just the tip of the iceberg there. Just kind of, again, then the traffic data is it's a mixture of some counts that were taken in 2021 and then piecemealed with West Street, right? A year later, same time of year, which is, that helps the case a bit. But again, I agreed with the the woman who talked about 2021. I mean, anecdotally, we've all been driving through the pandemic, post, pre. I agree. I understand Mass DOT and other entities are trying to give correction factors, adjustment factors, similar to a seasonal adjustment. There's adjustment factors for holidays, all sorts of adjustment factors. But the more you're washing this data and adjusting it and trying to, the less it's really grabbing towards what's happening out there, right? Mm-hmm. And then in particular, you got to understand that you go out and do counts for, your peaks. You're doing one data set, n equals 1. So that was just one day. The more data you get, the better those regression lines are in your ITE trip generation. That's ITE's issue, not the applicant or our issue. But the more data we get for our, the more counts we do, the more data points we get, the more this, holds a little more weight. But one day to say that it's going to actually do this, it's better than doing nothing. But it's most certainly not painting a very hard and fast picture, it's not like the properties of physics and, the properties of material mechanics that you can really rely on that to act in a certain way, right? Yeah. So that is what I just want to make clear to the board here about this study. And again, they followed the process extremely well. It's a very well-written report, right through exactly how I used to write traffic reports in Providence many years ago. Synchro, I'm sure it was used perfectly. But again, the left turns, if you break it down, the left turns are extremely concerning to me, both coming in and out of the site. Again, if you break down some of those numbers, you can see a left turn almost every minute or so during that peak hour. There's no queuing involved, so queuing, it's just cars stacked up at a red light. We all know, so I've been driving this road every day, twice a day for 10 years now. I can anecdotally tell you, as some of the folks on the calls have said, from West Street north, that queue goes all the way to Burger King someday. You're sitting there, right? And now what happens if you have an uncontrolled, no signal, basically metering who's coming and going, and almost like a police officer directing traffic. Well, you guys need to stop and let these people out of this facility. Now you need to stop, right? On top of that, just again, picking some of these numbers, I think I saw 118 lefts in a peak hour coming out of the facility. So if they're really queued up, where are they going to go? Are they going to be backed all the way up into phase 4 and now blocking people? There's just a lot to go through here. That there's some stuff, some qualitative stuff. Maybe a better analogy, right? The stats, this is like the stats on the back of the baseball card. It's not exactly telling you how that player actually plays in the field, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Best way I can put it, and I'll digress there. If we want some written stuff, I can write some stuff down.
Can I ask a question
Yep.
from what you just said, which was very well said, thank you.
Yeah.
So one of the things we can do is we can request a peer study, as was mentioned, which was we just get another opinion. But another thing we could do, and you don't have to, you've submitted a traffic report, but we could discuss our concern, and would it be of benefit to ask for some additional study to be done instead of a peer review by the applicant to provide a more timely estimate of time and maybe an extended duration? Is that better than a peer review, or?
I think I would.
What do you want more?
I think a peer review would evaluate the process which they have followed.
Okay, so you don't, but it wouldn't add in that extra time of like study. That's kind of what I'm asking, is like, would you prefer to have the extra time?
I think more counts would potentially help bolster the claims, here, one way, or maybe not. Maybe a third party would have some recommended studies as well, something to study the actual arterial, the queuing, some more qualitative evaluation. I'd have to think about it. I don't know off the top of my head what the best route to go in, but I think we need to look at the traffic in a little bit more detail.
Absolutely. And that might be something we can discuss with the applicant in terms of a preference there, because I think personally that having more data would be beneficial, and I don't know that the peer review would provide more data.
The problem, like I said, the process, and you can still use the same trip generation formulas, but if they're based off of 4 or 10 or 12 studies, you still have a flawed process.
Did you see, and I'm digressing, but one of the things I'm used to seeing, and I think I missed it, I think this is just me, But sometimes often I see in these traffic studies some indicators of the time it makes to do a turn. Right here, I'm just seeing the number of cars that.
Oh.
But I don't remember seeing in here. Maybe someone else did that. It's estimated that it requires 20 seconds or 30 seconds to make a turn.
Yeah, Carrie would have that, and like Synchro's going to assume, based on the distance, she'll enter the characteristics of the intersection, leg lengths, and then the timing from the cabinets.
Is that in here? Did you see it?
It's baked in, like it's accounted for.
It's just not indicated.
Her LOS, it's baked into those LOSs are reflective of the turning, the time of the vehicle to make the movements, the number of vehicles, the delay. It's all, the LOS tells, it's a good indicator of the performance of each phase or in each movement.
So if I were to ask,
but there's no arterial kind of, it's just telling you how those two intersections are functioning. It's not telling you that somebody may have a hard time getting out of CVS. It's not telling you.
Yeah, so if I were to
getting,
ask taking a left out of after the build condition, I think I'll ask this to Carrie if you're in there, if it's okay with you.
Yeah.
Taking a left out of the build condition or a right, do you have an estimated during peak hours, weekday, well, how about how long the turn will make?
We do have that. It is in the report. When I summarized in the slides that I showed tonight, I just showed the level of service letter numbers. I didn't include the things that Mr. Hartman just described, the queue lengths and the timing. And I apologize, I closed my slides, so if you give me just a minute, I can find that for you.
B, C, D, E, F, and then F being bad, and we saw that in some other projects we've worked with.
D's where it starts to be a little concerning.
Yeah. D is?
It's pretty well accepted. I think D's, E is, even if in a more urban area like a Providence, Worcester, E's, like you're pretty pumped about E. For Easthampton,
Okay, so maybe we could, there's some issues there that maybe we can get feedback from the applicant next meeting on that as well. Anybody else want to raise anything else for the next meeting? Or,
a lot of the questions I have were asked in the two documents that I asked the applicant to review.
And I know we're still waiting on some stuff from the fire department and DPW and Concom, obviously. So, yeah, Jeff?
I just had one question kind of related to traffic. So coming back at the next meeting right now, previously, the next meeting of the board is January 3rd. So one of my big questions is that enough time for the applicant to come back with some responses? And then the one thing I wanted to ask related to parking was, I wrote down here, sorry. Is there any idea of how long it would take to understand, I think Ms. Pike mentioned the intersection control. I guess the intersection control, and it ended with an E. Yeah, evaluation. Thank you. Sorry. Do you have any indication of how long that will take to take that step with MassDOT? Is that, my understanding is we probably wouldn't expect that in 2 weeks, but is there any kind of timeline for the applicant to engage that level of review with MassDOT? Because that might answer some of the questions that Member Hartman asked. And so I just didn't know if you had any indication of when that process starts with MassDOT.
So typically, we wouldn't necessarily be starting it until we start MEPA, but the first stage of it is not a huge lift. So I think that's something we could talk about. I think January 3rd is probably a little aggressive for us to have something into DOT and expect that they've reviewed it, given the next week and a half, holidays and all of that kind of thing, and assuming that there will be some missing folks at MassDOT who are taking time off with their families and things like that. But I think we could get that ball rolling. Like I said, my understanding of the intersection control evaluation process is that there's stages of it, and whether you need to go from stage 1 to stage 2 depends on their review of stage 1 and if they think they need more information, et cetera, et cetera. So my understanding is that stage 1 is not hugely involved. In other words, we don't have to have the whole intersection designed and all these that kind of thing. So potentially we could have something submitted to them perhaps early January and get that process rolling. And I don't remember what the review time is for them once they get it.
And to be fair, a lot of the issues that I kind of see are all mitigatable. It's just changes to the road and not the applicant's development. It would be like two-way turn lanes, like it was mentioned, Frank, coordinating signals, maybe adjusting the timing, potentially long-term a roundabout at that Florence Road intersection. There's like, those are the types of things that would actually, I think, maybe some smaller things you could do too, but there are ways to mitigate an increase in traffic on this corridor. It just, their physical changes and likely jurisdiction of Mass DOT.
The hard part's the timing of all that. I completely agree. I mean, it's just probably going to have to come
It is mitigatable, to be clear.
Right. We'll have to just condition all of it on the DEP because it won't be us to review until well after this goes.
My experience with them, they don't take a curb cut application seriously without conservation and planning board approval.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd be constantly giving out permits with no, they don't even, they'll just, do you have approval? Nope, then we're not even looking at it.
Right.
I understand that.
They don't want to waste their time.
How does the January 3rd date work for you? Is that going to be one where you come back and say we're not ready on stuff and we should push it out further, or is it worthwhile to meet on the 3rd?
We will have comments addressing each one of those documents by the 3rd.
Okay.
When's your Conservation Commission meeting again? After the 3rd, right?
Yeah, it's January 9th, I think.
Does it make sense to meet before the Conservation Commission meets again?
I mean, I think we're going to meet again after the Conservation Commission meets, so we might as well have a January 3rd and shorten our list.
Yeah.
Or we could have a special meeting and just do it the week after Concom.
Yeah, we could do that too. Let's see where things are, because some of the stuff we need is
If
from
you guys want
other.
to move it to the week after Concom, I'm okay with that.
I'd be willing to do a special.
Well, I think that gives us time to have a site visit before the next meeting too.
Makes sense.
We could do that. The only problem with that is we got to plan that here, because we're going to do it as a meeting, right? So we'd need to find a date that works. We could do.
And it might be worth double checking. You know, you've said that you'd be available.
Have to do it at our meeting, or
Just for what it's worth, we do have another application for January 3rd, so we have to meet then anyway.
Okay. That's a good point.
Yeah.
There you have it.
All right, so
Good point.
So let's meet on the 3rd. I mean, if we want to have another meeting 2 weeks after that and schedule a site visit at the meeting on the 3rd, we can do that too.
Okay.
But I don't want to make you guys wait. I mean, I don't think the next one is the one we vote at anyway, so we might as well meet.
If you guys have a meeting on the 3rd, then let's meet.
Yeah, okay.
And then we can get our responses to you, and we can get more feedback.
Yep, okay. So just for members of the public that are listening to this, so some of you might have gotten notices to be here for this meeting. You will not get more notices. The notice is what we're saying right now. So we'll be back here on the 3rd. And if we have another date after that, we will pick that date on the 3rd, and we'll tell everybody then. But the abutters notices only go out with that first application, and after that, it's sort of come to the meetings to find out, or word of mouth. So make sure you spread that to people if you know people that didn't come today or won't get a notice for the next one.
Our agendas are always posted online too on the town website under the planning board as well. So if you're ever curious, just check there.
And there will be a different Google Meet link.
Yes, I knew I was going to
And
forget
what
that.
time would you go to on the 3rd?
And that's what I was saying. It depends on who the other.
What did we say to the, we said we were going to do the solar first?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
7.
So, yeah, why don't we schedule this for 7?
I think solar's going to be an hour.
We say that, but well, I guess you could say.
I mean, we can say 6:30. Let's say 6:30, and if we can start it at 6:30, we will. That's a better approach. And on the 3rd.
Can you imagine if it's at 6:30?
Harry, you still there?
Yep, I'm still here.
Oh, Harry. Sorry, Carrie. I was asking Harry Schumann.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Carrie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Anything you want to add or chime in on, or are you okay waiting until the 3rd for your questions?
I'd rather not comment right now.
Okay. All right. So then.
Wouldn't serve any purpose.
Okay. So I will take a motion.
Motion to continue the Tasty Top Development LLC seeking a plan approval and special permit till January 3rd at 6:30.
I'll second.
All right. Voting to continue to January 3rd at 6:30. All in favor?
Aye.
Harry?
Aye.
All right. Okay.
Aye.
So we will see you folks back on the 3rd. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, we do have one more item on our agenda. This is the planning board member to sit on the CPC. So Harry, do you want to give a little overview on this? Tell us sort of what the situation is?
Well, I'm not sure if there's a situation or not, just that I'd like to, maybe somebody take over from what I've been doing for 12 years, so.
So just so board members know, if you don't already, one of our seats is on the Community Preservation Committee, is a planning board member. Harry's done it for 12 years. I think it's actually a pretty fun one. Chris has sat in on it. It's a board where you get to give away money, so that's kind of fun. And Harry, first this came up because Harry's down in Florida, but I think in general Harry might have run out of time to spend on the CPC unless no one else wants to do it.
What are the times?
What do you mean? Do you meet monthly, Harry?
Yeah, once a month.
When?
Like usually, sorry, Harry, Thursdays usually, right? Harry, is it usually on Thursdays?
Yeah, Thursday, the third Thursday of the month.
Third Thursday.
Third Thursday of the month, and it's maybe an hour. It's not a long meeting.
All right.
Depending upon what's going on.
Sometimes it's half an hour, sometimes it goes like this. Sometimes it goes for 2.5 hours, depending on what comes up.
Don't say that, Harry. We're trying to sell it to people here.
Right.
I'll volunteer for it if no one else.
All right.
No, I'm interested, but I think due to the nature that I have to go to a lot of these meetings as a part of my work, I would.
It's hard enough crossing out Tuesday nights.
That's right.
Yeah.
I would love to, but I don't think my employer would.
Yeah,
like that.
that's fine.
All right.
You can do it, and I'll be your backup if you need.
Oh, okay.
All right, so Ken will do it. He's technically an appointee of the board, so we should probably vote on that. So anybody want to make a motion for
I
Ken?
nominate. I think it'd be a nomination.
A nomination, sure. Let's do nomination.
I heard you wanted to go.
I'll be my first one.
Come on, Danny, try it out.
I'll make a motion to nominate Ken as the planning board representative for the CPC.
Second that.
All right, so voting for Ken on the CPC. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, so Jeff or Eli, can one of you guys send a notice to the CPC or something to let them know that Harry's off the list and Ken's on board?
And I think the next meeting would be in January.
And I'd like to add, Harry, thank you for your service.
Beat me to it. Yeah, Harry, you've been doing this a long time. So thank you.
So does that takes effect immediately?
Yep. Okay. And I'm glad you're off the CPC, Harry, but not the planning board, so don't go anywhere, all right?
And are you still on the city internet committee as well? Or is that done?
What's that?
Municipal broadband, are you still doing that? Or that disband?
Yeah.
Are you having a hard time hearing us? I don't know.
I think so. It's okay.
Next meeting.
We'll talk next time.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So motioned.
Seconded.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Harry. Have a good holidays.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.